Okay, now thank you so much for all of your encouragement with this. Ever since I broke that out of the mould last weekend, the encouragement and the faith in this has been burgeoning. I really appreciate it. I really do. No pressure. I will make it work. It will work out okay. I've got support struts to put onto the understructure. I've got some struttage to put underneath the panel itself and so on. But today is straightforward. I've done the bubbles. It's completely bubble-free zone now. I've just got to put some filler on it today. So it's a good thin skin of filler over the whole thing and sand it back so that it's got a smooth finish, and I'm going to whack a little coat of paint over it. It's not going to be the finished paint, but it's going to be just a temporary one for now. It will be so that I can see any more bumps and then I can finally fill them later. So today it's kind of one skin of filler, one rub back, maybe one more, whatever, but no rubbing out of the fiberglass. I've got about thick, probably 6 mil thick of fiberglass on that, and I'm absolutely happy with it. It's not over resined. The matting is saturated correctly without too much resin. There's a little glossy glassness of resin over it where I did the bubbles, but they'll just be scuffed out this morning before I start. And then hopefully once I leave it to dry, come back to it, it'll be ready to start working on the underside. This is just to stabilize the top skin and get it looking right so I can handle it, move it around. I won't even trim it all back to final shape yet until I've mounted it on the bike and I know where it looks right and so on. So there we are, that's a lot of chat. You want to see action? Let's get stuck in. Welcome back. Right, let's scuff off the shiny bits. No shiny. A little bit smoother, but try not to take any weight off. Let's get some filler. Right, let's give it a little weigh. It's not really relevant, is it? But it's worth knowing, interesting to know, isn't it? There's a whole tin of filler in there. Now it weighed 1.86 kilos. What does it weigh now? Now 2.35, so that is pretty much exactly half a kilo. 1.86, 2.35, yeah, that's it. Smidge, tiny little bit under half a kilo, so just over a pound of filler in that. I'm going to rub it all out, but I'll be able to find out with this exactly how much of it I'm going to take out. It is still cooking hot though. It's going to take probably an hour to cure, so I can start rubbing that down. If I rub it down now, you just clog up the paper with sticky lumps. It's not set yet. Let it go off completely and cool down, and I'll hit it with the paper and see how much of that I can get rid of. There we are. Okay, it's 1:45 now, so a couple of hours sanding there. I'm really chuffed with that so far. As you can see, it's taking on this kind of mottled look now as I'm gradually going through the filler. But every one of those little patches there, dark patches, is fiberglass, and obviously that means if I'm rubbing any more on that part, I'm thinning out the thickness of the panel, and that's what I don't want to do. So rather than thinning down and reducing the high spots, what I've got to do now is build up the low spots. So at the cost of a tiny little bit of weight, I'm going to have to fill up any low spots that are left now. I can't just keep rubbing to get them out. There's a little bit of asymmetry at the front here. I've got to get rid of that, and a couple of little spots at the back, and I'm going to trim quite a lot of this up. Probably going to take, if I look at it that way on, I'm probably going to take all that bottom section there off. I kind of like the idea of a thin panel, just going along thin, probably take about half that weight off there, and then bring the under tray up to meet it, sort of thing. So I'll gain a little bit of the extra weight that the new, if I'm going to put some more filler in this, that might bring a little bit more weight, but I'll gain that back when I trim some of that off. So it's not the end of the world, it really isn't. I'm going to stick an all over coat of silver on that, so it's one uniform colour, let that dry overnight, and then I can come back to it, fill up the little low spots and do another sand. It's just a repetitive process, I'm afraid, like it is with this sort of thing, but it is worth it at the end. Come on, you must admit, it's definitely going to be worth it when it's done. So one more sand over this with some 60 grit, just to knock down the grooves and gouges in it, just to make it a little bit smoother, and then we'll bang some paint over it and that'll be a done for today. So let's get on with it. Little tip for you if you're going to do this, when you've got that's what, a pound of filler turned into dust, it's an extremely light aerated dust, it's like cement powder. So before, you can't just put that in the bin. I don't agree with that because it goes airborne, it stays airborne, and it is an irritant. So what I'm going to do, what I always do with this, when I get a large quantity of this dust from filler sanding, I've just got a little Tupperware pot with about 1 inch of water in the bottom, and gradually I just pop it all in there, and then put the lid on and leave it. And what it does is solidifies like a lump, and then you can get rid of that, stick it in the tip, whatever, and it won't go airborne everywhere. It'll just be one solid lump. Took the trouble of not using the sander. I was going to use the air operated sander for this, but it literally distributes that stuff all over the garage. And you come in the next day and you can still smell it, which means it's still airborne. So this stuff's so light and it's so fine that it's better to put it in some water, let that soak through completely, it becomes like a waxy putty, then you can wrap it in some tissue or some paper, you can get rid of it in a responsible way, which I think is the right way to do it. There we are, got 1 inch of water in the bottom, Tupperware lid on, leave that, in about 2 days that will become, like I said, a muddy lump, easier to get rid of. Right, here we go, moment of truth. It was 2.36 kilos with all that filler in. Let's see what we've rubbed out when you tap the edge. What do we got? Let's hold it still. 2.18, right, so 200 grams of filler was that dust. That's what that was removed, and it still has 300 grams in it. It was 1.86, 2.18, that's give or take 300 grams extra. So that's not the end of the world because, as I've said, I'm going to cut this. I haven't really bothered sort of filling or doing anything over these. I've just kind of left them and wasted filler on that, because what I'm thinking I might do is cut this down there, take these ears off, actually factor in a modicum of detachment from the tank. The way it hugs the tank perfectly, that's very CBR 1000, if you're old enough to remember them. I don't really want that, I want it to look a bit aggressive, so what I might do is come down at a bit more of a rakish angle there and just cut that straight along. Take that whole bottom section away and cut it level with the battery tray. So where the bottom of the battery crate is, work out where that is up here, and then just cut it level. So you still can't see anything underneath it, but there's nothing hanging down. So that gap between the wheel and the tail panel is as much as possible. You want to look like you can walk through there. So that probably, all that section there, all the way across, will all get ripped off. All that is coming away, so I'm not too worried about that. And that will give me some of that weight back, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, now it's all in that finish. You can see all these little craters perfectly. All these little gaps in there, that sort of thing. See where I need to fill. And of course I can also see, now you can sort of get shade on it, and you can see the little dents that I need to fill up. And it is now also looking a lot nicer than just in fiberglass. So at the moment, 2.15 kilos. That's not heavy. That's still nice and light. It's going to get a little heavier because it's going to have a steel tube in the back with the light Frenched in and a little leather panel for the seat, so it might end up 3 kilos, but that ain't bad. That really ain't bad. Anyway, let's stick it in the bike, so it looks like. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. There we go. Happy with that so far. Now there are obviously always a list of stuff to do in my head. I don't really keep it written anywhere, but the next thing, I'm not going to worry too much about fine-tuning this now. I know the shape is good. I know that all I need to do is fill a few low spots, sand back, finish and paint. That's cool. I'm not going to worry too much about that. It's certainly not worthy of the next video. Next one, I'm going to work with what's going to mount underneath. Now I made some points in the recent videos about using wood, and I thought it's great. It's super lightweight. It's strong if it's thick enough. Piece of 3x2. Something like that. But a lot of you gave the relevant advice that, of course, remember, it's going to get damp, it's going to expand, contract, and so on and so on, eventually rot. So yeah, that's a good point. You can cover it in resin, I get that. But the reason I said about the wood was this somewhere to bolt to. So I am going to delete that. I don't think I'll bother with the wood. Good advice, thanks again for that. What I'm going to do instead is the old original tail frame. That old original subframe, that is box section aluminium, and it is 5mm thick, but it's super lightweight. And I've got, of course, the riv nuts, which are great as a thread. So I'm going to fiberglass in some of that across on the inside to give me a side-to-side strut made of box section aluminium inside. Super lightweight. I can put riv nuts in there as connectors, and that will give me something to bolt this down to. I can do the same across the front here. At the moment, I've just got these 2 rubber stoppers standing on there to give me a height. But what I'll do is substitute those in the end for a piece of box section, the same thickness, that will go up underneath here and fiberglass in. So effectively that will sit down on top and it will have fasteners in it, effectively. Just those rib nuts. Aha! Get in there, that's it. So those riv nuts, effectively I'll be able to bolt it down at the front and bolt it down underneath the rear, and the whole thing will be absolutely rigid and solid. And a couple of bits, all it will cost me is a couple of bits of aluminium box section, piece of cake. After that, it's just a case of welding probably some steel angle underneath, off this structure under here that I've made, to get as short as possible to those pieces of aluminium box section and bolt them down. Easy, that's it, done. So that'll be the next couple of videos next week to work on getting this bolted to the bike. So there we go. Hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for watching. Take it easy, ride safe, have a great weekend. I'll see you tomorrow for some more fun and games with the tools.